TV's The Nanny Fran Drescher was assaulted at gunpoint after a dinner party in her own home.
I really had like a primal scream in literal horror.
I can still hear her.
Everybody had been gagged but me.
And they put a gun to my head.
The life that you thought you were gonna have, that's done.
Fran thought no one would ever find out about what happened that night.
People say to me, oh, I wish I had your life. I said, be careful what you wish for.
But then the media exposed everything.
Fran was raped. How long before that beautiful body was being used again?
I'm getting sick just listening to you say it.
One of these tabloids reopened it up, connected me to the rapist.
She just said, I'm in trouble. Like, what do you mean you're in trouble?
A paparazzi drew a roadmap for a sex offender to start stalking me.
Why did nobody else protect her?
He was on a rampage.
Think about how many people you saved.
We had made plans with a girlfriend of ours to go home to my house. And she was planning her wedding. We were going to talk about things like that over dinner.
All of a sudden, we heard this huge bang. And two guys with guns came running in.
And I really had like a primal scream. It was like every cell in my body screamed all at once in literal horror.
And they took us up to the bedroom and they tied me up. And they put a gun to my head. And I thought, this is it.
Everybody had been gagged but me. So I was talking to him the whole time. I managed to really memorize the features of the man that was actually the rapist. I didn't know if we were gonna come out of this alive. And I just wondered who was going to be the first to go and who was gonna have to sit there and endure seeing their loved ones get killed before they get killed.
We received the phone call from Franny crying out that two men had broken in and had raped her and Judy at gunpoint, and they made Peter watch.
I wish I could have done more. But maybe if I did done more, we wouldn't have lived.
We both kind of remember the moment we saw each other when we were 15. I was walking up these stairs and he was walking down.
And I said hello, and she said hello. And I couldn't believe that that voice was coming out of that beautiful face.
It was like we had known each other our entire lives.
By the end of high school, he and I were kind of a couple. And by the time we were 21, we were wed.
Is that a good thing to be married now to the guy you met?
Yes, we've sort of done everything together.
So we had, way back when we were like 21, started writing ideas for both of us to start like an I Love Lucy kind of thing. And they were our idols. Lucy Jr. Wrote to us when we were doing The Nanny and said, be careful what you wish for.
The Nanny was our baby. We created it.
The New York Times had this headline, Mary Poppins, she's not.
Franny was like such a force of nature, and right from the beginning.
When we were trying to come up with names for the children, we decided if we ever had children of our own, we wanted to name one Brighton and one Grace.
I remember being on the back stairs with Fran and taking all of our hands and being like, okay, we're gonna go out there and everything's gonna be great.
I was aware of the show being a pretty successful hit when we started beating Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Oh, thank you so much.
We knew we had caught lightning in a bottle.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Fran Drescher.
Fran Drescher.
Fran Drescher.
It's a thrilling.
I was talking to Robin earlier this morning. I said, hey, Fran Drescher's coming in, the nanny. And I said to her, I read in People magazine that she was, the victim of a violent crime. Fran was raped. How long before that beautiful body was being used again? Probably for years you wouldn't even use it.
Oh, no.
When the show was a success, there was one of those tabloid shows on TV.
These tabloids reopened it up and connected me to the rapist. They went to the prison and they talked to him, and it was terrible.
This incident occurred a decade earlier, but seeing it on television caused me to experience tremendous post-traumatic stress.
And for me, who really didn't allow myself to live it in the first place, I then started sort of dealing with it all over again.
Let me ask you this. Is the
the
perpetrator in this room?
No,
Gentlemen.
he's been incarcerated 114 years.
Oh, no kidding. He must have gotten a lot of people.
Yes, there were 2 busloads of witnesses, but
Oh,
it was a
boy.
group? Brothers.
How did the cops catch these guys?
Well, I must say that I have a photographic memory, and I was watching TV just that week. They were saying if you're in a situation, it's really important that you get the details, the features. Very important.
But these guys let you see them?
Most victims get so scared they don't consciously try and be aware of that.
And I remembered that interview that very night when we were held hostage at gunpoint. And so I managed to really memorize the features of the man that was actually the rapist. I ended up helping the police do the artist's sketch, and based off of that, they were able to apprehend him.
So when they stopped him just before he got onto the freeway, he had a pocket full of jewelry, and his fly was unzipped.
Fran Drescher's attacker may be behind bars, but her fight isn't over yet.
I was very victimized right at that point because a paparazzi was camped down in front of my house and photographed me in a way that really depicted the block that I lived on, and consequently, drew a roadmap for a twice convicted sex offender to start stalking me.
I just sort of picked myself up, dusted myself off, and pushed my feelings out of the way. But of course, I now know that they don't really go anywhere but deep inside. I remember once I was in a restaurant, and I think it was a busboy or a server dropped a tray, and it made a loud crashing noise, which obviously everyone in the restaurant noticed, but I leaped to my feet and screamed because the pain was so close to the surface.
My husband went into therapy because he seemed more obviously affected by it. I noticed that it was difficult for him. He wasn't speaking, like he was just really quiet. I was still in my I'm the superwoman mode. So I felt like I can handle this, but we should seek help for him.
I would fight constantly. And it got really bad.
But I became very, very controlling with her. I didn't deal with anything about me. What she wore, what she ate, her weight, who she'd be with, everything. I wanted to control every aspect of that show and her.
So I left, and it was very tough, and he didn't want it. And we had at least another year of the nanny to do together while he wasn't speaking to me.
We were separated for like the last 2 years of the series. And after the series ended and we actually filed, he moved to New York. He couldn't get far enough away from me. He was very angry.
I felt guilty that I left him because I'd never really done anything like that for myself at the expense of someone else. I totally lived for everyone else's happiness. Pain will find its way in your body if you don't let it out. And my problem back then was that I didn't really explore the depths of despair that I was in. It was like a perfect storm. I wasn't feeling well. The marriage was, busted apart. And I was just very unhappy. I had been experiencing symptoms that I couldn't quite explain in the final season of The Nanny and the whole first year out of the series.
And I basically went from doctor to doctor, and every doctor had a different solution for me.
Until I was finally diagnosed 2 years and 8 doctors later. She called and said, I'm very surprised, but you have adenocarcinoma. And I said, what's that? And she said, uterine cancer. And I just dropped to my knees and wept.
A radical hysterectomy was going to be my cure.
And, a radical hysterectomy is a difficult operation for any woman. But for one who had never had children like myself, it's a particularly bitter pill to swallow. And it was very, very hard for me to deal with the pain of that. I felt like the cure for my cancer was actually a punishment on top of a punishment.
And I was angry at the medical community. I felt betrayed by my body. I would look at my body in the mirror when I came home from the hospital and the cruel red line across my pubic bone, and I was swollen and black and blue all over.
And I remember one day I was feeling particularly down. I walked into the bedroom. My boyfriend was, running his own business, reading a book. And I remember with my fists, I pounded on his chest that I don't want this to be this way, that I didn't feel like myself anymore.
I thought, I'm never going to be what I was. My life is never going to be the same. And whatever plans I had and whatever direction I thought I was going in, I'm not going to go there any longer. And my parents came to stay with me to help me to recover. And my mom was like flitting around the house, opening and closing cabinets, making lunch for our family. I couldn't even lift myself up a single step without being in severe pain.
Well, it was on that day that my cousin Susan was coming to visit, and my mom had just made lunch, and we all gathered around the dining room table to eat, and Susan was talking and eating, and suddenly she starts choking on her food.
And I'd seen someone do this in a restaurant before, so I had recognized it. And she immediately got up, still holding her glass of white wine, and she starts doing this. She can't breathe. I jump up from the table without a moment to lose. I get behind Cousin Susan, and I start doing the Heimlich maneuver.
And my mother, in a similar voice to mine, says, "Don't rip your stitches." When all of a sudden, a tiny piece of regurgitated poultry pops out of her mouth and lands on the floor. And Cousin Susan, still gasping for breath, says, "Fran, you saved my life." But in a funny way, on that day, Cousin Susan saved mine. Because in that moment, I began to feel like my old self again. And I decided, I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna make something out of this.
I thought, I'm not gonna handle this pain like I did the last one. And I really have to approach it from a different point of view by means of feeling my fear, feeling my pain, asking for help, being vulnerable, all of that I was unable to do after the breaking. I think that the idea of talking about something takes the curse off it. So I'm talking. I'm a cancer survivor, and I was a victim of a violent crime, and I spoke very candidly about that so that people could see that if she could survive, maybe I could find the courage to do it as well. Everybody goes through things in their life, and there are silver linings. I know that through my cancer survival, that was one of the things that rejoined Peter and I. When our manager called him to say Fran had cancer, all of his anger melted away, and all that was left was the love.
And it was after you divorced that he came out as gay, as I understand it, right?
Yes.
I had always known that I was attracted to guys, but I was also attracted to her.
I think that because we had met when we were 15 and became very codependent, then I think we both
didn't know ourselves as well.
We're very different people now because we've gained insight to ourselves. I mean, the good thing is that we've learned how to reinvent our love and friendship for each other in a way that suits us far better now.
You have said that your life has been about turning negatives into positives.
Transformed by her own experience, Fran has gone on to transform the lives of so many others.
Fran was unstoppable.
Think about how many people you saved.
You have to try and turn your pain into purpose.
So this has really become my life mission.